Okay, what was that? Someone else just okay. 6 minutes, right? Hi, welcome to the session. This session's all about the UN SDGs. So there's 17 UN SDGs, of which the fourth one is about quality education. And the title of that is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So there's a whole series of targets within that, which I'm not going to go through because it's quite comprehensive, all the way from primary to higher education. But it's all part of the UN's goal of which is a 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And as somebody that's very passionate about education, I think it's a fundamental human right, but more importantly, it's an enabler, and it enables people all over the world to gain knowledge and skills to basically control their lives and earn more money and be part of an active part of society. So it's really, really important to me, but also as part of the Super Connect competition, I think we've had some great entries, and what we wanted to do is just explore some of the things around the fourth SDG, but also to see what some of the companies thought about those. So, introducing myself, my name is David Boswood. I'm from the Royal Agricultural University. My passion very early on in my life was technology. I created lots of different technology businesses, and over the last 10 years, I've moved into education, and I'm a great believer of promoting education to, at the moment, lots of rural communities where sometimes education does get missed, and trying to develop that. And today I'm joined by 4 others. So we've got Rowena, Aurelie, Trevor and Manish. So I'm going to go through the list and ask you to introduce yourself, starting with Rowena, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, David. I'm Rowena Innocent, Group Head of STEM Strategy for Spectrus PLC. So we are a FTSE 250 engineering company, and my role has really 2 focuses. One is that we're setting up a foundation, a charitable foundation that's focused on STEM education and removing barriers to enable people to have access to a quality education. The other part of my role and focus is helping our group of businesses think about their STEM strategy, and that's largely to do with relationships with education, whether that's in schools or universities or beyond, and enabling them to have a sort of healthy pipeline of talent into the businesses, and also engaging and retaining our employees. And in addition to that, I'm also a trustee of NMITE, which is New Model Institute for Technology and Engineering. It's a new higher education institute in Hereford and is designed to disrupt higher education for engineering. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. On to Aurelie.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the panel. My name is Aurelie Soulier. As my name suggests, I come from France originally. I've been in the UK for probably over 17, 18 years now. And my background is I'm a trained teacher. And after a couple of years of teaching, I had an MSc in computing and went into digital education technology for the last 15 years, which combines my love of education and technology. And I've supported a number of universities, including also some vendors for technology over the last 15 years, but mostly in higher education. And I've worked with David at the Royal Agricultural University in the last 3 years ago. And currently I'm a learning technologist and digital advisor, digital assessment advisor, and I work at the University College London, but based in Swindon, as we're all often remotely based at the moment. I'm helping academics designing better assessment, quality assessment, relevant assessment, whatever the mode of education, but predominantly digital, to help them move their assessment online, but also thinking of type of assessment that avoid things like plagiarism, etc. I'm keen to contribute today because I'm passionate about, as David said, the general access, fundamental human right of access to education for all. So thank you.
Okay, and good morning, Sari.
Good morning and greetings from Finland. So I am a founder, CEO for the company Sjaaks Science that offers playful science education for young children. We have customers and teachers, schools from 30 countries at the moment, and everything we do, we base on scientific research. So we have, for example, years of academic research by our founders and researchers in the University of Helsinki. And now we are kind of a startup trying to scale this quality educational model and importance of science education and science process skills for young children all over the world. So you don't need any expensive hardwares or supplies. Sjaaks Science lessons can be done with everyday household objects. So no need to order expensive science kits to do that.
Okay, thank you. On to Trevor, please.
Oh, thank you, David. It's really wonderful to be here with this panel today. So I'm Trevor Bezzina from Potentially, where I'm COO and co-founder. Potentially, we work with around about 80 universities and colleges across the UK, Europe, and also abroad in places like Australia. Primarily, what we're doing is we're bridging the skills gap, both professional and personal. So we'll work with both university to scale up employability, but we're also then working with industry, so the likes of companies that maybe Rowena is coming from, to bring those industry skills much earlier in the education process, because companies like theirs recognize that you're going to be hiring a lot of people in 5 years' time, and so to be successful, you've got to ensure that we have that pipeline of trained talent coming through. The other thing we do, we capture lots of extracurricular activities every day, allow students to map it against all sorts of frameworks, including the SDGs, and then evidence that and showcase it in a portfolio. And then what we try and do is also we try and react to society needs. So last year we ran a Class of 2020 campaign, which was to open up our platform and take some of that industry training and make it available to particularly young people from 16 to 25 to bridge them through the COVID crisis.
Thank you. And finally, Manish.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here. I'm Manish Jar. I'm the founder and CEO of Neocepet Tech. We work in early learning space, actually really early. We work with the parents of children under 3 years, so pre-nursery education. We offer them a comprehensive platform that enables them to make the most of this very, very important 0 to 3 year developmental window. We believe that facilitating right kind of developmental ecosystem in 0 to 3 years is a huge enabler for all kind of social and humanitarian goals, including SDGs. With our very advanced digital platform, we believe we've got a way to democratize this, and parents worldwide can benefit from it. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And so we've got a first question, which sort of started as a 10 question. And I just wondered what the panel thinks about how technology can help deliver this goal, and especially as this goal is very large. It's encompassing everything from pre-primary all the way to lifelong learning. So if you want to just give me an answer of how you think technology can help this, but which parts of the sort of value chain or the life cycle of somebody's learning do you think would be the best one to go for? So let's go with Rowena first, if we wouldn't mind.
No problem. So yeah, just speaking from sort of the industry view on it, I've been doing sort of learning a lot about new technologies that are out there at the moment to support people getting things like work experience. And certainly through the pandemic, what we saw is that a lot of people were moving their work experience onto digital platforms in order to sort of continue to connect with potential employees. But the sort of added benefit of that is that you're then able to connect with a huge number more than you would have done if it was face to face and you were accommodating people within your sort of factory area or whatever. And then also geographical boundaries disappear as well. What I really see is that technology can help to remove a lot of barriers that perhaps, you know, in terms of people being able to travel to see people, have interviews, facilities, they're able to do that, and they're also able to participate in learning environments that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So I see technology being a huge enabler at every point of the educational pipeline, in fact.
Okay, thank you. Sari, anything to add?
Yeah, I think we had quite own experience for that. So actually, when we started with Sjaaks Science 4 years ago, we actually flew to Malaysia. We flew to different countries to actually train teachers face to face to validate the demand. And we saw that, of course, face to face training for teachers, for example, is of course really effective. But then the problem is that it's one-time thing and we cannot support them, or we cannot be everywhere in the world at the same time. So nowadays the platform is kind of accelerating also the learn by doing for the teachers, that we provide step-by-step guidance whenever they are in the need of the situation. So they can go to the platform and to be trained there or get all the resources they need through that. So it's then, I think, without the technology and those kind of channels, how to share this wouldn't have been this scalable or this fast without the technology. So definitely that helps a lot, even though the children are not using any technology, but give the resources for the teachers have been super easy for us.
So
do you think you'll go back, or do you think you'll stay with this?
Or definitely stay with this. So in some cases, there's nobody now that feels like we should fly there to train teachers face to face. It's more like that we might have these starting webinars or something that there is a live webinar, a live interaction, but there is also then, of course, the digital and technology online, they're present, but we can also have seen a huge impact and better learning for the teachers also, that they can do it at the time they are in the situation of the problem.
Okay, thank you. Aurelie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's totally what I believe it helps with. Technology helps with enhancing the quality of learning, because you can have more consistent learning when it's repetitive online, and you take time to design it as well. Although you take time to design a class learning, but support the teacher development, because you can scale. The scalability is really important with technology. You can scale that out. I worked with Cambridge Assessment when I was at Catalyst IT, and they had already pre-pandemic a system of teaching online to assist the teachers around the world, and that's been like the scalability of that has been really, they've been able to increase that during the pandemic and after, and that's been really useful. But also bridging the learning device, like Rowena said. I'm helping some academics and university to use what's called the Universal Design for Learning, which is a framework that helps designing better access for people with different, whether it's disability or different approaches and cultural approaches as well. So using different paths to help people who would be normally classified as vulnerable in terms of learning access, to help them to access learning. So as long as learning is done with human touch in mind, it, with technology, it will help. If you just try to replace something by a package, ready-made technology and dump it on someone without the human touch. So that initial webinar that Sari mentioned is really important. Creating that contact and cohort space as well is very important. But use the technology for that.
Okay, thank you. Manish, do you have anything to add?
David, I would like to I'll take the liberty to expand the scope of technology. And of course, when we say technology, generally we refer to digital technology and the reach and the ubiquitousness scale. These are the first things that come to mind, as my fellow panelists are saying. And that, of course, is the first port of call. That's the first thing that's happening with education technology. Everybody is trying to digitize what we are doing in the classroom in some other way. And then within that, there's also an opportunity to enhance the depth. So with virtual reality, augmented reality, the quality of content itself. But then this is still within the realm of digital technology. And I think that's fantastic. But then let me bring in another angle here. How about the technology of how we learn? That itself needs to evolve. And the kind of progress cognitive neuroscience has made in last 2 decades, I reckon, and we work a lot in this area because we work with small little children. That's when the brain development is happening. I reckon that within a decade or so, some of these concepts will make into the mainstream education, and the way we learn will change, and that will be a huge multiplier. So just to put in perspective, so let's say there's a concept in calculus that in the classroom a teacher would take 10 hours to kind of get across to 30% of the let's say 30% of the class. But then how about changing the whole the way we learn and the new understanding of how brain picks up information and bringing it down to 5 hours or 2 hours, 3 hours, and then embedding it with this whole digital dissemination. I think the future in that world is extremely exciting, and I think that's where the real growth or real disruption will come from.
Well, that's fascinating. Okay, and finally, Trevor, do you have anything to add?
No, I think I'd echo a lot of those comments. Particularly agree with the idea that technology really allows us to extend the reach, and also I'd point to the fact of the ability to react to situations. So we just need to look at the last couple of years and see how quickly and how far technology can be used to reach and react to the pandemic, both bring in learning online rapidly. So we've gone through a situation where, particularly our sector, universities and colleges, there have been decades of discussions around just bringing on lectures online. And what we've seen is we now know that actually it is possible very quickly to adapt and bring in tools. And so, there's a couple of examples I've read about recently of what we saw in particularly rural Africa in Botswana, where technology doesn't also have to be high tech. There was a charity, NGO, that worked with the government to take 10,000 learners and reach them just by SMS and text messages, because not all rural villages have access to great data, great infrastructure. So I think it's looking at technology and EdTech in particular and seeing how we can do it, and looking at particularly the learners themselves, where they're placed, and how we best can reach them based on the context they're within. And for us, we work primarily in developed countries, but even us, we've seen, we saw during the last couple of years usage from over 200 different countries and over hundreds, over 100 different languages. So, I think it's that reaction, reach, and I think that's only going to continue, hopefully.
So I'm going to stay with you, Trevor, but second question, what are the quick wins, do you think, with the technology to try and get this goal achieved? Where do you think those quick wins are going to be?
So, I mean, probably echo what I've just said is that ability really that you can't necessarily do with traditional methods, where you can mobilize sort of reach and reaction so quickly. And the example is how you can also collaborate better. So I think I would say to all innovators or all edtech companies is you've got to look at your technology and say, well, how you can look at the next pandemic and say, well, how can we adapt quickly, work with companies and collaborators, and have an impact that way. So we saw that last year in really mobilizing something like 40 different volunteers who all independently did an amazing job within a couple of months to connect industry, bring learning from industry that would normally be walled off for current employees, and open that up. But to do that, they had to work with universities, they had to work with technology providers as a vehicle to get there. But I think there is that willingness. So yeah, I mean, we've got to ask ourselves, what can we do with the capability we have today, even though the infrastructure may not be there?
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Rowena the same question, please?
Yeah, sure. I think just kind of expanding on that a little bit, I think that, yeah, I mean, I've been really struck by how sometimes simple things can have a huge impact on people. And, you know, when you're sort of connecting or inspiring the next generation, it doesn't necessarily take a lot. You know, and also that human interaction is so important. So where there's opportunity, as Trevor was saying, to reach a broader audience through technology, I think that's really amazing. So I love being able to, you know, just sit on huge Zoom calls that enable me to speak to a broader audience, just to give them a little bit of insight into what it means to work as an engineer or scientist is fantastic. So I think that, you know, really simple things can go a long way with the support of technology.
Okay, so the old-fashioned KISS principle, keep it simple.
Yeah.
And okay, Sari, do you have anything to add on that one?
I'm not 100% sure. Do I have anything specific to add on that? But I was thinking, like, as there was in a chat also, Hannah mentioning the part, like how important it is also, especially for young children, that you are not everything doing in a Zoom or through tablets or these kind of things. And I think that has been also like really important for us. Like, you can learn. And you usually learn better when you are in a group of really face-to-face children, and also not using any devices, that you actually learn hands-on stuff and play together and those kind of moments, even though have been technology supporting the teachers learning, for example, before that. And then the tablets, apps, and Zoom calls might be as an add-on. That then supports, for example, even what Aurelia said, the assessment part or something else that then can build on top of that. But I hope we never go into a situation where we have young kids doing 100% everything through Zoom or online. And yeah, let's hope we never go there.
Okay, Aurelia, anything else to add?
Yeah, well, just an answer to that. Sorry, it has shocked me in the pandemic of primary schools. There were a few, but some who were trying to force children to be, 100% online all the time to try and replicate the classroom. Whereas, luckily my children's school, for example, just providing them a list of activities they could do to help, during the day, because they use the technology to help the teacher develop those activities and turn them around quite quickly, because they had to develop things quickly. So using the technology to help with the speed of production of resources, but also Trevor's, actually, where that you have ready-made things that you can access, or range of resources that you can reuse and access, or etc. So using the open platforms that are free to use. I don't want to name brands here, but there are a lot of open source platforms that people can use, and using that to try and broaden the access. But unfortunately, although these are like little quicks for a lot of things, there's a lot of work that can't be done as quick win, and I think giving access to technology where traditional education has failed to access is not going to be a quick win. Where at the moment, if you look at the UNESCO report, that women have got 12% lower access to the internet as men over the world, and that gap in some places has increased over between 2013 and 2017, for example. We can't fix that as quick wins, so we need to think of how can we educate the people who let people have access as well to try and do that, but also not try and guide people too much, but let them come up with their answers. So that's why we need to train the teachers. We need to train the people in education first.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Manish, did you have anything to add?
Just picking up what Aurelie said, I think content sharing is a huge opportunity, and we haven't seen anything in that space yet within education technology. And I think that if something triggers it off, that could be a big wave. We've seen the success of creators economy elsewhere. I mean, media. It's an explosion that's going on here. But I think if we somehow find a way to get this whole creators economy mindset within education, that could set up a huge revolution, because traditionally delivery and content are two distinct skill sets. People who are great with delivery may not be great with content creation, and vice versa. And I think that kind of collaboration and creators economy can really be it's a low-hanging fruit, and it could be very helpful.
We were recently just looking for a new textbook for an economics module, and we came across a free license book that 325 universities in America use. And we've got to say, it's one of the best economics books we ever came across, and it's been crowdsourced by lots of universities to put it together. And it's one of the only textbooks that's got COVID-19 and how economic theories have had to change based on COVID-19. And because it's an online textbook, and because so many people are contributing, it's moving forward faster. So, and we've discussed, we would never use any other textbook in economics. And so, okay, there was one final question before we have to go. I was recently involved with a project where we were helping a university in Africa to put some infrastructure together, and we went to the typical guys that we deal with for the virtual learning environment, and we normally use two businesses, which I'm not going to name. One wanted $50 per student, and one wanted $60 per student per academic year, which was an incredible cost, given that these African universities are doing things at a much lower price point. So my question really to you guys is, what business model? How can we get the emerging economies to adopt technology when $110 per student just for a little app is just going to be, they just can't do it. So let's start with Manish first, if you wouldn't mind.
Great, thanks, David. David, I have spent almost all my career in emerging markets, and I can tell you that they are very counterintuitive. So the first principle that I would go to is that there isn't a single model that you can apply to all emerging markets. Even within a single emerging markets, there could be 100 different models that you need to figure out. So that's one. I think the second piece is continuing with that counterintuitive theme. Look, cost may not always be the first concern for stakeholders in the emerging markets, as it feels to us. India, for example, has such a thriving private education market. In fact, in Indian education is largely private nowadays, school education. So I think it needs to be kind of deeply thought. The last point is that education is a politically sensitive subject. And I think if we as an education technology providers or generally larger private sector education ecosystem has to deliver anything meaningful, we will have to be very, very sensitive to some very legitimate concerns that the socio-political stakeholders may have. And we've seen what happened in China recently, and not all of it is you can't discount it as a quirk of politics. I think there have been some very legitimate concerns. So I think these are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when we think about emerging markets.
Okay, thank you. Sari, did you have anything to contribute?
Yeah, I think it's like as a startup, and of course, as we have VC investors backing us up, it's like we are definitely not profitable because we don't want to ask big amounts of money from teachers or even parents to pay for our solutions. So I think it's like we have to be innovative also, like where we get the first kind of money to then accelerate this and offer this to a wider audience. And I think then partnering with ministries of educations and those kind of things, if you don't have huge amount of costs to create a hardware or these kind of things, which in our case is not. So when you have these softwares just to share, I think one of the Finnish edtech companies have done an amazing job called Game. They are teaching literacy and language learning. They have always partnered in these emerging markets and countries, ministries, that they pay a certain amount of money and then they share it everybody for free. Like, for example, preschool children or something that then kind of go through that way, and then try to also think then as a company, where do you get the extra money, for example, then maybe creating some additional things that you would offer for parents who are then having the money. So it's kind of always balancing those, what you can offer for free, and then where you get the money from to actually keep your company alive.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go to Trevor next, if we can, please.
Well, I think that's a great case you've just sort of presented. I think I would just sort of point to two words, which is a competition and a collaboration. So I think competition I think there's one side of the equation, which is, you mentioned, what can the local governments and agencies and operatives on the ground do to improve infrastructure, lower the cost of data, lower the cost of distribution. And if you get all that right, if you can support that, which we've seen can be done in COVID, we've seen governments and companies come together, then you encourage more competition and hopefully, I think, more locally led competition and innovation, and who have a particular interest to help their own local communities and local drives, and be less, be commercially more sensitive to that. And then collaboration, I think, can also, as we've discussed, lower that sort of barrier by working across parties, whether it's companies, educators, and government.
Okay, thank you. Finally, Aurelie.
Yeah, so I echo a lot of that. The localization that Trevor just mentioned is massively important anywhere. So we need to ask the people who are going to use the technology how they want that technology to be enabled and where. But by this, I mean the actual people, like the vulnerable people who can't currently access it. So maybe it may be that you place technology in a point of access that's not what you assume as a developed economy would be the place where people will access. So like I mentioned earlier, maybe the traditional education place, the school, because it's private and not everybody's got access, you don't place the technology there. You place it in a community center where mothers go regularly. It's localization of the education, but you ask the people, the model is to ask the people where they need that, because they know what's needed for them. And trying to apply our views of, emerged economies on emerging economies models is probably not going to would be working, as Manish said, is counterintuitive. So that localization and that collaboration is fundamental. So totally.
Well, thank you for that. We've run a little bit over time, but I'd like to say thank you to Rowena, who has had to go a little bit early. Aurelie, thank you very much. As always, lots of insights of doing things on the ground. Sari, a fantastic startup, which is changing a lot of people's lives. Thanks for Trevor. Was it last year's winner? So
runner-up.
Well, and Manish, was he top 10 this year, from what I understand? Yes. So great panel. Thank you very much. And if anybody wants to connect with any of the speakers, then I think their connections is available either on the chat or through the Super Connect button, which is on the left-hand side. So thank you very much, guys, and I wish you all well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all.